Okay, so today we are going to talk about our software testing techniques that we follow in the in our practices that we do in software testing. So mainly we are going to deal with two types of techniques. One is static, another one is dynamic, and then dynamic has its two subtypes, which is white box and black box. Okay, so what is static testing? Static testing is something that you do that you do not perform on the application. That is something that you do on the documents that are provided to you. So you have a checklist that you would, or what this slide is saying, you have a checklist to check whether the work you're doing is going as per the standards or not. So this static testing is very similar to what you do in your quality assurance program. So you have a set of procedures, you have a set of checklists that you would verify that your application is being built on those set of procedures or those set of standards or not. So examples of static testing, again, we have reviewed the same thing earlier also. So reviewing the code, having the inspections done, or having somebody like your developer do a walkthrough on the code that they have developed. These all are your examples of static testing. Whereas if you move forward, okay, so let's take this an example of how you would do static testing on this particular program or particular code. Okay, this is static testing. So what we are not going to do here is we are not going to execute this code. We are not going to debug this code to find the error in it. Static testing is that you will go line by line. You will see whether the syntax used here for this C++ program is this correct or not. Are we missing any syntax here, or are we missing any value here that we need to pass as per the requirement or not? So static testing is done in that way. So this is an example exercise wherein if you want to go through this code of C++ and figure out what is it that is missing in this piece of code. Jaspinder, I expect an answer from you. But a simple nothing related to the logic here. If in case किसी को C++ programming में doubt है.
I found it.
क्या Param, can you come up again?
I said I found it. What is the error?
Okay, chalo, you hold on for a minute. Let's have others also give it a try. You can post it, Amar, in the chat one-on-one to me on Zoom itself. Not hearing it from anybody. So Param, what is your answer?
One after this COUT QAgenic /n उसके बाद जो ब्रैकेट है वो बंद नहीं की हुई एंड द सेकंड वाज इज send dot get के बाद सेमीकोलन नहीं है.
सी आउट के बाद में मेरे ख्याल से नहीं होता यहाँ पे ब्रैकेट्स बंद. आई एम नॉट 100% श्योर, but the other one that you figured out is the right thing. We don't have a semicolon on the C in get. Okay, मेरे ख्याल से syntax जो C out वाला syntax है ना, that is how it is. We can double check it, but the idea here is that what you did, Param, is right. We did not execute the code. We just read through the complete syntax and we tried to figure out whether we are missing anything in this particular piece of code. So this is how we do static testing. So Iskandar, what we can even do is that if Param or anybody else from our team had written this code, he would share his screen or apne code ko, he would start walking through the code, complete code. He would tell us that these are the variables that I have defined. These are the functions that I have called in. These are my headers that I have added to my code. And this is the logic that I have implemented. So when that developer gives us that complete walkthrough, during that walkthrough itself, we would figure out whether the developer has missed anything from the requirement, or he missed anything in the syntax, or the logic that he has implemented is incorrect. Is he missing that greater than or less than equal to wala thing or not in the logic, in the functions that he has created? So that is what is in totality talking about the static testing here. Yeah, Jaspinder?
That will come up in the compile when you compile the code, right?
That definitely will come up in the compile, which we will do during our dynamic testing. But when we are doing the static testing, we are not compiling our code here.
Okay.
Okay, we will cover that in our later slides. कि dynamic testing के अंदर what are the different ways through which we do that compilation वाला check. There are multiple ways that are involved when you compile any of your code. But with static testing, you don't compile the code. You have a review, you have a inspection of what is being done, and you have a checklist of the protocols, of the procedures that have to be followed in your application, and based on that you do this static testing. With dynamic testing, what we were discussing just in here, with dynamic testing, what comes here is that we would start executing the code. Or what we can do, if we are not going into the code, we will pass on some input to the code, and based on that input, we already would know what should be the expected output. So if this program that we are testing is for addition of two numbers, for say, and we know that if this is going to add two numbers, and I have to pass two numbers here to this particular code. So if I pass 2 and 2, I would know the expected result here should be 4. So if the output of the application is giving me a result of 4, I would say my actual result that has come out of this whole application is 4, which is matching with my expected result, which is also 4. So I would say this code is functioning properly and there is no defect in the code. But if I get a different answer, anything apart from 4 here, so I would know that my actual result is now not matching my expected result. So in this case, I would say that this code has failed. So this would mean that I am going to log a defect for this particular failed case. So with dynamic testing, there are two different methodologies that we use when we do this dynamic testing, which one of them is white box. Second one is black box. Okay, so what is white box? Okay. So I'm just moving around the screen wherein I can see you guys. So I see this computer wala animation going good. So in white box, what we do is we test the internal working of the code, which we also know as compiling or parsing of our code. So to do white box testing, the first thing that as a tester we need to have in us is that we should have a complete understanding of that particular programming language on which the whole application has been built. Agar Java ke andar that application has been coded, and if I am asked to do white box testing, but I don't know how Java works, what syntax of Java, what is the syntax that is used in Java, I won't be able to do white box testing. As simple as that. So if you are doing white box testing, you have to have complete understanding of that particular programming language. And in general, if you see, we as testers don't perform white box testing. At least 90% of testers don't perform white box testing. It is something again that is done by the developers mostly. Since they have the knowledge of the code, they understand ki kya logic lagaya hai, so they would do a peer review wherein let's say Jaswinder ne code kiya hai kuch, and then Vivek would be doing that white box testing on Jaswinder's piece of code. Wherein we are going to check, when we do the white box testing, we are going to check the internal functioning of the application. So again, with this white box testing, what we will do is, let's just run this animation. So we will give an input to the system. This input, we know what input this is. We know what the program is going to do, what it is intended to do. Actually, again, we can take that कि जो code है हमारा that is for addition of two numbers. So the input that I am giving here is 2, 2. For example, addition of 2 plus 2 के लिए हम दे रहे हैं. So once we input our code, I am expecting an output from this code. But with Whitebox, what I would do is that after I have inputted the code, I would see how my values are being passed in the code. Which line of the code is getting executed on the input that I am giving. Which line of the code is not getting executed on the specific input that I have given. So at the code level, I am seeing कि मेरा input जो है, how is it interacting with my code? So if I have 1000 lines of code with multiple conditions, if else condition hai, for loop hai, switch hai. So with my input that I am giving to the program, so with the input that I am giving to the program, it may happen that my if else condition wala jo hai na, if then else condition ke andar, my if and then are getting executed. But my input is not invoking my else wala statement, else wala condition. So I would go down to that level of the code wherein I would see how my inputs are getting executed in this piece of code. And I would keep changing my inputs so that I make sure that each and every line of the code is being hit. And thus I can tell for sure that all of the code that I have written, those 1000 lines of the code, I have tested each and every line of the code, and then they are functioning properly. Or they are not functioning properly. If they are not, then I have to go back and correct my code. Right? Does that make sense? Understandable cheese hai na, white box. Okay, the big difference between white box and black box that we're going to cover in the next slide is that with white box, you have the access to the code. You know आपका input कहाँ code को hit कर रहा है when you are doing the white box testing. With the black box testing, the complete code is blacked out from you. So if you don't have any knowledge of the coding language on which the application has been built, we are definitely going to do black box testing. Okay, so for this particular slide, if we see on the last sentence here, just for our reference purpose, white box testing is also known as glass, structural, clear, or transparent testing, transparent box testing. So that we see the code. What is the code behind the scene? We see that code and we know how the whole code is being executed. So moving further on to the black box testing slide. Okay, so let me run this animation also. If you guys are seeing the screen, Param. With white box, what we did is that we gave an input and we knew based on that input which line of my code is getting executed. But with black box, I don't have access to this complete code. What I know here is the input that I am giving, and based on this particular input, what should be my expected output. That is what I know. कि मैंने 2 or 2 numbers दिए to this code which adds these numbers. My expected should be 4. This is what I know, and this is what I know from the requirements that are given to me. ये ऐसा नहीं है कि I am drawing out my own expectation out of this program, but this is in accordance to the requirements that have been given to me. अगर मेरे को requirement client से ये आती कि आप 2 number को add करो, and the sum of these 2 numbers should be 1 greater than what the actual sum should be, I would have coded it in that similar way. तो 2 plus 2 अगर वो बोलता मेरे को 5 चाहिए, तो उसी हिसाब से ही उसको कोड को बनाते हैं, and then my expected result here would have been 5. ठीक है, वो confuse कर रहा हूँ मैं आप लोगों को. Let's not go that way. So with the black box testing, I don't have access to the code. I don't know based on my input how the code is getting executed, but what I know is what output I am getting out of the code. So I would be matching only the output that this program gives to me. If the output given by the program is in accordance to the requirements that were given by the client, I would say my code is doing well and this is functioning properly. There are no defects. If the output given to me is not matching the expected output, then I would say that there is a bug in this code. I, as a black box tester, cannot tell where exactly in the piece of the code that bug is. But for sure, I can say that since my actual result is not matching my expected result, there is a bug in the system. So I will go and report this as a defect to the developer. Okay, any questions on the black box side of it? Yeah, Harpreet, Vivek. Okay, so I'll take a pause here. There are quite a few messages that I just received. I will have to take a look if it is from Vishal, who is joining in, who is waiting in the lobby. Not yet. And for some reason, मेरा phone restart हुआ अभी अभी. Okay. Okay, no problem, sir. Nothing urgent for me to take care of.
अखिल व्हाइट बॉक्स टेस्टिंग में हम मतलब कि जो कोड है उसमें भी फाइंड आउट करेंगे एरर डिफेक्ट्स वगैरह को.
बिल्कुल.
और
आप
वो
व्हाइट बॉक्स के अंदर आप कोड को ही टेस्ट करोगे अपना.
ओके. और इसमें तो ओनली ये देखेंगे कि एक्चुअल रिजल्ट मैच टू द एक्सपेक्टेड रिजल्ट और नॉट.
एग्जैक्टली. देखो, लेट्स टेक अगेन दिस एग्जांपल ऑफ फेसबुक जो अपन हमेशा से ले रहे हैं. सो for us, if we have to test Facebook today as testers, not as end users, हम लोग क्या करेंगे कि now since we know the requirement of Facebook that if I post a photo on my wall, my friend should be able to see that particular photo. So that if we are testing this particular scenario, this particular flow, what we are doing here is that we are doing a black box type of testing. Okay, we would upload photo on my post, log in from my friend's post and verify कि वहाँ पे वो photo visible है कि नहीं है. If it is not getting visible, I am definitely going to talk to Facebook and tell them that there is a defect. जो photo मैं post कर रहा हूँ, my friend is not able to view that photo. As a black box tester, मेरा काम यहाँ पर खत्म है. But if I am a white box tester, the first requirement that I would have on being a white box tester is first I have to have the access to Facebook's code. ठीक है. तो उसके बाद में once मतलब what would happen, for example कि मैं एक system यहाँ पे है मेरे पास में, I'll open that whole code on that particular system. Or from my second phone, second system, or from my phone, I would upload a photo on my profile. So when I upload that photo, which is an input to the application, I would start seeing what are the lines of the code in the in my second computer which are getting executed. So I would know कि अच्छा line number 5 execute हुई, line number 6 execute हुई, line number 7 execute हुई, and line number 10 execute हुई. Then I would go on my friend's phone, and again I will see कि यहाँ पे photo मेरे को visible नहीं हो रही है. So from my system wherein I have this code open, I would say because my code line number 8 and 9 did not get executed, for some reason वहाँ पे वो logic ऐसा था that these lines were not invoked, and it skipped from 7th line to 10th line directly. So here I would know कि ये for sure these lines have some logical problem in here. So from the code itself, I can do a complete what we say as a requirement root cause analysis. Root cause analysis is something that we do for each and every defect to drill down or to dig down to that particular piece of code where we have a defect. So if you are doing a white box testing, आप बहुत अच्छा dig down कर सकते हो to that particular logic or to that particular line of code which is creating issues, which is giving a bug, right? So with white box testing, you definitely have access to the code. You go in and check each and every line of the code. How we do that? There are multiple ways which we are going to cover in our next slides. But you are right on that कि आप white box के अंदर you get into the code. With black box, you don't have access to the code. आप input देते हो, output जो आता है उसको आप match करते हो.
These both are basically types of unit testing, or these are separate things?
नहीं देखो, black box is definitely not a part of unit testing. White box can still be considered a part of unit testing.
Okay.
Okay, any of the testing types that we have covered in our previous classes, apart from unit testing, all can be a part of your black box testing technique.
Okay. And second thing, we talked about SDET, and basically, which is white box testing. It would be done by SDET.
हाँ देखो, SDET is again a developer, more of a developer rather than calling him a tester. So SDET के अंदर SDET's role would say that he has to do unit testing, which would definitely cover your white box testing also. ठीक है, but for most of the times for our 4 people here, most of the time that you would be doing, it would be more of doing a black box testing. Until and unless you have this knowledge of the code, तब तक आप ब्लैक बॉक्स ही करोगे. Once you have this knowledge of the code कि वो क्या सिंटैक्स है, जिसमें आपका कोड पूरा का पूरा प्रोग्राम पूरा का पूरा कोड हुआ हुआ है, until that point you will do black box.
अखिल, एक वाइट ब्लैक बॉक्स में मतलब टेस्टर रिपोर्ट करेगा ओनली अगर आउटपुट मैच नहीं हो रही है, और व्हाइट बॉक्स के अंदर पहले आउटपुट को चेक करेंगे या पहले कोडिंग को ही हम चेक करेंगे?
आप
मींस पहले हमने उसमें इनपुट डाली और फिर आउटपुट को चेक किया कि आउटपुट मिसमैच है, तो उससे रिलेटेड हम फिर कोडिंग पे गए, फिर कोडिंग को चेक करें, या पहले कोडिंग को चेक करेंगे?
आप इनपुट दोगे, इनपुट के बेसिस पे आपका कोड कैसे एग्जीक्यूट हो रहा है आप वो पहले चेक करोगे, आउटपुट बाद में आएगा. इफ यू रिमेंबर यार विवेक, फ्रॉम आवर कॉलेज टाइम्स, हम नॉर्मल सी या C++ के अंदर कोडिंग करते थे, कोड लिख लिया हमने, उसके बाद में हम लोग क्या करते थे, एक इनपुट देके ना, एक जब कंपाइल करते थे ना, एक पार्सिंग का बटन होता था ऊपर. अगर तो आप कंपाइल दबाते तो जितनी भी आपने कोडिंग लिखी थी, आपने 10 लाइन 15 लाइन 20 लाइन का जो भी कोड बनाया था, वो सारा का सारा एक साथ कंपाइल हो जाता था, एंड यू वुड गेट एन आउटपुट. इफ यू वुड पार्स ना, अगर वो पार्स वाला ऑप्शन लेते थे, दैट कोड वुड शो इन योर स्क्रीन, और एक एक लाइन को वो हाईलाइट करता था कि वी आर नाउ इन ऑन दिस पर्टिकुलर लाइन. फिर आप एंटर मारते थे तो वो अगली लाइन पे जाता था, फिर आप एंटर मारते थे, फिर अगली लाइन पे जाता था. तो दैट इज हाउ यू डिड अ कंप्लीट लाइन बाय लाइन एक कवरेज होती थी उसके अंदर. एंड फाइनल जब आपका कोड का एंड आता था, देन इट वुड हैव शोन यू एन आउटपुट. तो आपका इनपुट आएगा व्हाइट बॉक्स के अंदर. फर्स्ट यू विल test the complete logic, complete code, and then at the final stage you would then check the output. ठीक है, अपन अभी cover करेंगे those different ways also of how we do white box testing, which we see here on the screen. With white box testing there are different ways, like path testing अपन बोलते हैं. path testing के अंदर we have line coverage, branch coverage and condition coverage. ठीक है, we'll discuss what are these. With black box, there are different techniques of boundary value analysis, equivalence partitioning, race conditioning, race conditions, and error guessing. We'll discuss these. Let me just see if we have specific slides for line coverage, branch coverage, or else I'll discuss it here only. Okay, we have the slide here. Okay, so for path testing, if we see what is line or statement coverage, any guesses, dosto? Jaspinder, if you have done this thing.
No idea right now.
आपके
Branch-
सामने
Yeah.
सामने पढ़कर देख लो.
But
So what I was just telling ना, जो parsing वाला अपन करते हैं, if we have 1000 lines of code, and if we are checking each and every line, each and every statement of that particular code, that is how we do our line or statement coverage. ठीक है, very much similar to how we parse any of those C or C++ code. So you will go each line by line, check whether this particular function is called correctly, whether the variables have been declared properly, whether the logic that has been implemented here is that correct or not. ठीक है, सुन के ठीक लगता है when we are talking about 1000 lines of code, but for any application like Facebook, it is like millions of lines of code, and doing a line coverage or a statement coverage is near to impossible. अगर करने बैठ गए तो लगा लो सदियां निकल जाएंगी, यही टेस्ट करते रह जाएंगे लोग, line by line. So in such huge applications or such huge such complex applications, we don't do line coverage, but then the other way is that you do branch coverage. So branch coverage is branch coverage testing helps us in validating the branches that we have developed in the code. So any guesses what branches are? Jaswinder, you can help me. I'm not that good with coding. What branches are?
Branches in the GitHub?
नहीं, branches in the code, not in the GitHub. GitHub के अंदर तो आप अपनी branch पे आप अपना code को deploy करते हो. You just consider the piece of the code that you are writing, wherein you have branches. You have you did your branching yourself.
Branching, like dividing the code in a particular way so you can.
Correct. You kind of branch out the whole functionality into sub branches so that you can tackle each of those functionality in a given manner, rather than having कि यो पूरा का पूरी login की functionality उठा के एक ही piece of code के अंदर लिख दिया. You branch them out. लॉगिन के अंदर यूजर नेम को अलग किया, आपने पासवर्ड को अलग किया, फॉरगॉट पासवर्ड को अलग किया, कीप मी साइंड इन को अलग किया, लॉगिन बटन को अलग किया. So that way, when you start doing your branch coverage, you would cover first username wala branch, then you would cover the second branch, third branch, and so on. That way, you're focusing on those particular fields that appear on your application. So down the line, if we have to again test, if we again have to take the example of Facebook itself, you definitely would know from the last 10 builds, 20 builds, there is nothing that has changed on the username field. So you may have this option to skip this particular branch and test the other branches. So that way, if you are talking about Facebook wala code, you will have an option wherein you can quicken the whole process. Rather than testing each and every line, you will pick up these branches that have to be tested because the code here has been changed, or the code that has been changed in the other part of the application impacts on these particular branches. Similarly, the third criteria here is our condition coverage. So conditions is very simple. The conditions that we apply in our code. It could be your if then else. It could be your Boolean expressions like true or false. In case of true, it would execute this particular code. In case of false, it would execute this particular piece of code. So you would be testing conditions based on the inputs that you are providing. So you would know on this particular input, the if condition will get executed, and you would check whether this if condition is giving me the right output or not. Then you will change the input, and then you would know on this particular input my then condition wala code will get executed. Then on the other input, it would execute the else wala code. So with this condition coverage, branch coverage, or line coverage, the benefit, the advantage that we get as testers is that while we are testing the whole application, we are hitting each and every line or every branch or every condition of the code. Nothing is left out because we are seeing how the code is getting executed. So we are testing each and everything in the code. The disadvantage with black box that comes in is that we don't have access to the code. We don't know piche kya execute hua hai code ke. Out of those 10,000 lines, 1,000 lines of the code, it may always happen that the input that we are giving has never triggered that else part in the code. And to our bad luck, that else part in the code had an error in it that was not properly implemented. Because our test data, the inputs that we selected were not correct, were not big enough to test that else wala part, we skipped that. We missed that particular bug there. And when we release it to the production, when the end user starts coming in, they inputted something that triggered that else wala part ka code, and we have a defect that is reported by the user. So that is a advantage that we get while we do white box testing. We are for sure, we know that we have tested, we have covered each and every logic that has been implemented in the code. What way you select for doing your white box testing, that totally depends upon how big the project is, what how the architecture has been developed, and there are many ways on which you decide कि हम लोग line coverage करेंगे, condition coverage करेंगे, branch coverage करेंगे when you do the white box testing. Clear? Any doubts?
Just being curious, when we say we branch out the code, so we put a comment there to differentiate or something? It is something
देखो
entirely else?
comments तो रहेंगे. If you see ना, the way the code are written, देखो there is one way that I showed you कि जो अपन ने previous screen पे एक code लिखा था. There is one way of writing that code which is not the right way to do it. If you comment, if you have proper comments कि ये जो मेरा branch है, this is for username field validation. This particular branch is for your password validation. That definitely is a good way to write your code. Then you have indentations also. Then you have these branches also created in the code. तो अगर आपने कोड बना लिया, परम ने आपने कोड बना लिया, and then you move over to a different team, and Jaspinder has to come in and take responsibility of your code. For Jaspinder to review your code, to understand your code, if you don't have these proper branching, proper indentation और proper commenting कि ये particular logic क्या कर रहा है, किस requirement के against आपने ये लिखा है, Jaspinder is going to have a very difficult time understanding your piece of code. And she would go back, tell the dev lead कि भाई ये कोड मेरे को नहीं समझ में आ रहा. Practical में आपको बता रहा हूँ, I have seen these things happening. People would say, new developers will come in and say कि I can't understand this piece of code. This has been written very badly. Give me a few days, I will write from scratch a new set of code. So that is why जो reviews हैं, जो quality assurance वाले जो processes हैं, inspections हैं, walkthroughs हैं, those are very important because that would make sure that the processes that have been set by the team are being followed properly or not. Logics तो देखेंगे review के अंदर अपने, but we will also see whether those comments have been put there at that particular branch or not, whether we have indentation or not, whether we have the right types of conditions created or not. अब if then else is one condition. If then else के अलावा you can even use a switch case. Switch versus if then else. If I go back to my college times, what I remember is कि switch का जो code है ना, that would get executed really slow as compared to your if then else code. So this would impact the performance of the application. So if we go back to our performance testing, if we find कि हमारी performance application की खराब है, and during that analysis, if we figure out that the developers have used that switch case, we can have them recommend that rather than using a switch case, use if then else. So आपका throughput, आपका response may get better here. So all of these things would depend on the architecture that has been created. आप क्या method use करते हो, क्या protocol, क्या process use करते हो to code your whole application. But any other questions?
If the tester doesn't know about the code, but the developer written, then how can he?
The first thing, if the developer does not know about the code कि क्या है, क्या लिखा है, and that is what you will find most of the time, then you are not going to do white box testing. We are definitely going to do black box testing. So this would come in just when there as a requirement from the client that we have to do white box testing or not. If this requirement says that we have to do white box testing, so the people that you hire in your team, आप वैसे ही बंदे उठाओगे who have complete understanding of the code. If this has not been specified that we have to perform white box testing, then you will pick up people who can perform black box testing.
Okay. So it depends on project to project.
It would depend on project to project, and most of the times you would not do white box testing. It is like 90% of the testers out there in the market, they do black box only.
Okay.
मैंने अपने 17 साल के करियर के अंदर I have not done white box testing. I have seen one of my very close friends writing those test agents using JUnit to perform white box testing. मैंने खुद अपने हाथ से नहीं किया कभी भी.
Okay.
चलें आगे. I'm not sure what happened with Vishal because he's not here, and as I was speaking, मेरा phone dead हो चुका है. There's nothing happening on this phone. पता नहीं क्या हुआ है. Oh, okay. So boundary value analysis is one type or one technique that we do while we do our black box testing. So as the name suggests, what we are doing here is the field that has been given to us, we are going to test the boundaries of that particular field. Here we have a very good example that we have to the boundaries to be identified for a class is 1 to 12. So if you consider that we have a page wherein we have a field named class, and the values that this particular field will accept are from 1 to 12. Okay, so we know that this is for sure going to accept 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. ठीक है, ये पक्का है मेरे को. The problem that can come is at the boundaries.
Yeah,
कि
it
हो
will
सकता
accept
है.
2 and 13 because it's the boundaries.
हाँ, exactly. देखो, this is what we have to test as testers, and we know that कि coding के अंदर there could be this error of developer putting in less than की जगह उसने less than equal to लगा दिया, या less than equal to की जगह उसने less than लगा दिया, which could be a human error, human mistake that may have happened by the developer. So for us to do boundary value analysis, we are going to test on the boundary values. So when we do boundary value testing for this particular field, जो कि 1 to 12 का ही एक input range ले सकता है, we will create our test case, or we will create our test data, which will give the input of 0 and 1 to test that first 1 वाली boundary, and to test the 12 वाली boundary, we will test for 12 and 13. If you want to go a little ahead also, what you can do is कि 1 वाली boundary पे you can even test for -1, and 12 वाली boundary पे you can even test for 11. So the point here is that हमारे पास में जो field है, if you take an example, very common example that you would see on any of those registration pages is age field. अगर आपके पास में age field पे if there is a validation that people above 18 years can only register here, and not anybody above 65 can register, तो एक आपको boundary मिल गई 18 to 65. So I am pretty sure as a tester that if I input anything between 20 to 63, तो ये लेगा ही लेगा. There is no condition that is applied between for these particular test data. जहाँ condition हमारी खराब हो सकती है because of that developer's error, that would be somewhere around 15, 16, 17 for the first boundary. For the second upper limit, it could be for 64, 65, 66. So when I would say that I have to test the boundary value analysis, I have to do the boundary value analysis for these fields, I would not pick any of the other जो बीच में आता है boundary इस particular field के range के बीच में जो numbers आते हैं, I won't pick those. I would just test for these 3 inputs from the lower bound, 3 inputs from the upper bound. That would confirm that हाँ ये हमारी application का ये particular field ठीक से काम कर रहा है या नहीं. ठीक है, why do we need to do that? Why not test every value in here? 18 to 65 है ना हमारे पास में age field. Let's start from 16. Let's test till 66 all values.
Because of two things, it would be very time consuming, and the second is because whenever we put a condition, it would be at the boundary.
Very correct परम. अभी तो अपन सिर्फ एक field ले रहे हैं. If there is a field which would accept values from 1 to say 1 lakh, if we start testing each and every value, possible नहीं है, मतलब it is definitely possible but not recommended that you test each and every value. And when we know the conditions have only been applied at the boundaries, so let's test the boundaries only, ना. ठीक है, I hope this is very simple, very easy to grasp. Okay, any questions? Okay, so the other testing technique here is equivalence class partitioning. What we do here is that the test data that we use to test equivalence class is that we divide our test data into 2 groups. One is a valid class, one is an invalid class. So with the valid class, what we are going to do is we are going to put all the inputs in here which we know are going to be valid for this particular test case. And on these particular valid inputs, my test case is going to give me the correct or the expected output. For the invalid class, I am going to put in all the invalid values here, which I am sure कि ये सारी की सारी are going to give me an error. So this is how I would segregate my two different classes. Let me see if I have a no. So let's again take this example of age group. कितना था 18 to 65 वाला हमारा लिमिट था. So there are अच्छा आप लोग करके बताओ मेरे को this exercise. So on this particular age field 18 is the acceptable age and 65 is the acceptable age. So anything between 18 and 65 is going to be accepted. So now I have to create two different classes. One class will have all the valid inputs on which my test case is going to accept this input. One class is going to be an invalid class wherein when I'm going to put in this particular value, this particular piece of code is going to give me an error. Okay, so you guys tell me what are the values that are going to go in a valid class.
Valid is 18 to 65 because
Correct. क्या क्या values आप डालोगे उसमें फिर? All values from 18 to 65, 18, 19, 20.
no, we can like partition, do the maybe 10, 10, 10 of the gaps. It depends actually.
So you're saying we can pick up 18, 28, 38, 48.
Like 30, like that.
Okay, and anybody else? Valid के अंदर what do you think?
I think there should be one at the boundaries and then 3, 4 any random values in between.
Okay, that also makes sense. We can pick up like what 18?
18, 65 and then maybe 35, 46 like that.
ठीक है, ठीक है. Very true, Param, in that sense कि हम लोग एक valid अगर class उठाते हैं तो I'll have a focus on the boundary first and randomly between that whole range I would pick up a couple numbers from that particular valid case. So for this particular valid case I may be picking up 60, 18, 19, 45, 64, 65. So with these 6 values I am sure that the application should give me a valid output, or the application should accept these values which are valid values. Now I want to hear from Harpreet and Vivek, what are the values that are going to be in our invalid class?
So less than 18 or more than 65.
More than 65.
I need numbers. ये condition तो मैंने आपको दी. I need numbers that you are going to input.
Sir, 17, 15 or 16, like 66, 67, 68.
ठीक है, correct. Vivek, आप क्या बोलते हो?
हाँ यही same.
You agree with Harpreet? ठीक है. So for invalid, what we are going to do कि हमारी जो boundary है उससे 16 से 18 से नीचे वाली जो थी 17, 16, 15, that would be invalid for the lower bound. For the upper bound, my invalid numbers would be 66, 67, 68. So I can pick up these numbers in my invalid classes. So again, the reason of doing equivalence class partitioning is that rather than testing on each and every digit, each and every number in that particular class, you are creating two different classes. Uske andar you are picking up 2 or 3 numbers that is going to be your test data for this particular test case, and you are in a way what we say is reducing that whole effort that you are putting in on testing that particular field.
So Akhil, in the invalid equivalence class, can we do the testing on the -3, -2, -1 or something on the numbers?
अगर आपका field जो है if that has a lower bound of 1, you definitely can do. You have to do. अपने case के अंदर we took this age field which had a lower bound of 18.
Yeah.
So invalid का part होगा, definitely negative numbers would be a part of invalid, but logically if you see as a developer or as a tester, I am pretty sure if the logic is not implemented correctly, it would even fail on 17.
Yeah.
ठीक है, तो मेरे को अगर नेगेटिव वाला भी मैं उठा लेता हूँ इनवैलिड क्लास के लिए, तो अगर लॉजिक ठीक नहीं इंप्लीमेंट हुआ है तो नेगेटिव वाला भी पक्का फेल होगा ही होगा. ठीक है, सो दिस इज क्लियर. Okay, so moving on to race condition and a very interesting type of testing that we perform when we do race condition. Okay, let me see. Vishal is here. Okay, I just admitted Vishal, waiting for him to connect to audio. All right, so Vishal sir, you here?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was late because
Okay.
there came an urgent meeting from client. I'm so sorry.
No problem, Vishal sir. Can you take this forward? We just completed. Let me just take you back. We completed the white box.
Okay.
These coverages, and for the black box, we completed the boundary value equivalence class, and we are now on the race condition. And
Wow.
I am actually getting some pings from my client as well, so I'll address those while if you can take this ahead.
Okay. Okay, guys. All right. Hello. Good evening, Indian friends, and good morning, Ispinder.
Good morning. Oh, good evening, Vishal.
Okay. So what have we covered? So white box testing, black box testing. Any questions so far?
No, I think we are good.
Okay, Paramveer.
All clear.
Okay. So race conditions. Okay, so today's session is very much interesting because these are the techniques that you will be applying directly or indirectly when you will be doing a testing, right? So boundary value analysis, Akhil has already covered it. Now coming to the race conditions. So race conditions, right? So race conditions are basically the scenarios, where multiple users or the two users simultaneously trying to access the similar data or the same data, identical data. Right? So that comes a race condition. Right? For example, that let's say if Paramveer is trying to make a transaction from his using through internet banking, right? So there may be chances that he is making one payment from his mobile phone and another payment from his laptop, right? And let's say if he hits the submit button or the make payment button at the same time, even the milliseconds are same, exactly same time, right? What transaction should process first? The one that he is trying to make from his mobile phone or the one that he is trying to make from his laptop? Right? So in this case, doesn't matter, right? Either the mobile one can happen first or then the laptop one can happen first, right? But such conditions are called race conditions when multiple users are trying to access the application, a particular thing at the same moment, same time. Okay. A very classical example of race condition is, आपने देखा होगा, there comes sales of mobile. वो आता है कि they open it for a 15-minute or 20-minute window की sale start हुई है for a particular model of a mobile in India on Amazon और Flipkart पर ऐसा होता था, if you remember. ठीक है, तो उस सेल में क्या होता था? हाउ डू दे मैनेज दिस? बिकॉज in 5 minutes, within 5 minutes or within 2 minutes sometimes, the moment sale starts, within 2 minutes all the bookings are done. Okay, so race conditions are very common in those scenarios कि भाई उस at that particular on those within that 1 minute probably there are millions of users who were trying to book a mobile on that Amazon or Flipkart application at the same time, at the same moment. So the hits were coming, at the same time. Multiple hits were coming at the same time. So how does a system behave or react to those requests? Right? What are the algorithms that are working behind so that system should handle those queries? So मान लो अगर if there are 5,000 hits are coming at the same time, तो application को should have some algorithm कि अगर same time पे आ गए हैं तो which one, see it could be a FIFO, first come first server in general protocol, right? कि file system कि हाँ अगर जो पहले आया है उसको access पहले मिलेगा, but the scenario, the race condition जहाँ पे सारे लोग एक ही time पे access कर रहे हैं exactly the same time, how application should behave. So these are the more likely scenarios that we can think of कि application जो है वहां पे crash होती है, okay, in general. But the applications which are very stable like Amazon, Flipkart, and they are meant to handle these scenarios, the race conditions very well. There are the algorithms behind that, okay, if a race condition happens, this should happen. This should be the message the user should see. And these many users should be able to. So there are algorithm ये भी हो सकते हैं कि यार अगर इस तरह की कंडीशन आ गई, ठीक है, कि बहुत सारे यूजर्स मोबाइल बुक कर रहे हैं एट द सेम टाइम पे सबने सबमिट बटन पे क्लिक किया है एग्जैक्टली सेम टाइम पे, देन द एल्गोरिथम वर्क्स लाइक दिस कि यार कौन सा यूजर, विच यूजर वाज ट्राइंग टू access or book the mobile from the last 3 sales, तो उसको वो preference दे सकते हैं, they keep that data, ठीक है. So I mean they have their own ways of handling it, but in general race conditions में applications crash होती हैं, applications start behaving weird, and that results into a defect. Okay, so for multiple scenarios you can think of the race conditions. So but in general race condition is where multiple users are trying to access the same data or same feature at the same time. Okay, so can you think of any such scenario जहां पे आपको लगता है कि race condition happened and you saw the crash or you noticed that application is not behaving properly? बहुत कॉमन बताऊंगा एक आपको.
Watching the NFL game over here, sometimes it crashed and it makes slow.
Sometimes it gets crashed, and while making
फ्लिपकार्ट भी क्रैश हो जाती है कभी कभी, मतलब वो जब वो सेल कंडीशन सेल के टाइम पे it sometimes stopped working, means
sometimes
it got
stops working. Sometimes the whole application goes down and they have to restart their server. ठीक है, आधे घंटे के लिए Amazon is बंद, ठीक है. But what that happens in a scenario where millions of people are trying to book a mobile, but in general it doesn't. तो उसमें तो कुछ कर भी नहीं सकते. But और IRCTC website, ठीक है, it's really difficult to book a ticket there, especially in the Tatkal wala feature, right?
Which site is that?
IRCTC,
Indian
Railway
Railways.
booking.
ये साइट सर रोज रात को 1 घंटे के लिए बंद होती है सर, 11 से 1 बजे ये बंद होती है सर.
So that could be a race condition probably, Harpreet, or that could be a general maintenance or triggers or the cron jobs probably running in the background. So triggers and the cron jobs are basically at the time when the automatic processing happens are called the cron jobs. ठीक है, cron jobs में क्या होता है, automatically system updates होते हैं. So for the applications जैसे IRCTC वाली जो applications हैं, it is very important that these applications have up to date data of available seats, RCA, RAC, and other information of available routes, right? So for such cases, the cron jobs happen. कभी-कभी आप देखते हो, especially in the शेयर मार्केटिंग और म्यूचुअल फंड्स वाली जो एप्लीकेशंस होती हैं, स्पेशली म्यूचुअल फंड्स एप्लीकेशंस, ठीक है? सो म्यूचुअल फंड्स में नॉर्मली दे अपडेट द डेटा एट 12 PM, रात को 12 बजे, ठीक है? इफ यू लॉग इन एंड चेक द current value of your mutual fund, you will find it different after 12 PM because they update it daily on a 12 PM. So what happens on a 12 PM? A cron job runs and that picks up the latest NAV value जो होती है उसकी, and then calculate your whatever investment you have done, and they give you the current value. Okay, so these are the cron jobs. बहुत सारे features, बहुत सारी applications होती हैं जिनमें cron jobs चलती हैं automatic. So if I go by the example, so race conditions all okay, Vivek? Race condition fine?
okay.
ठीक है, very important. So सबसे important चीजें जो है ना in software testing, boundary value and race condition and error guessing. I don't know, error guessing is already passed. हाँ, अगला आ रहा है. But let's go back. अभी example discuss कर लेते हैं. Actually, please go back. Okay. So have a look at this example. Example of race conditions and other time dependencies. Person X has 1,000 in the bank, and there are two more persons, Y and Z. Suppose X debits 500 to Y and Z debits 500 to X. What would be the amount with X if both transactions are executed simultaneously? This is called testing. This is called testing under race conditions. Okay. So X जो है बंदा is Parambir. Parambir has rupees 1,000 in his bank. Y is Harpreet and Z is Vivek. So X जो है debits 500 to Y. So Parambir जो है he puts 500 to Harpreet, and Vivek जो है he debits 500 to Parambir at the same time. तो किसकी लेजर अपडेट होनी चाहिए? पहले परमवीर के पास पहले 1500 हो जाना चाहिए, एंड देन 500 हरप्रीत को जाना चाहिए, फिर 1000 बचना चाहिए, या परमवीर से पहले 500 माइनस होने चाहिए और फिर 500 ऐड होने चाहिए? सेम टाइम पे हुआ है. सो इन दिस केस, इन दिस पर्टिकुलर सिनेरियो, एक्स के पास दो ट्रांजेक्शंस हो रही हैं सेम टाइम पे. एक्स हरप्रीत को, परमवीर हरप्रीत को 500 रुपए ट्रांसफर भी कर रहा है, और परमवीर उसी समय विवेक से 500 रुपए रिसीव भी कर रहा है. तो परमवीर की जो लेजर है, जो स्टेटमेंट है बैंक में, उसमें एंट्री कैसे आनी चाहिए? दोनों सेम टाइम में हो रही है. पहले विवेक से जो पैसा आया उसकी एंट्री आनी चाहिए, या पहले जो हरप्रीत को पैसा गया उसकी एंट्री होनी चाहिए?
आई थिंक जो पैसा आ रहा है उसकी एंट्री पहले होनी चाहिए.
हाँ, मतलब इट डिपेंड्स ऑन द बैंकिंग सिस्टम ना, कि बैंक उसे कैसे हैंडल करता है. बट दिस इज समथिंग विच इज इंटरेस्टिंग टू चेक, ठीक है, एज अ टेस्टर, कि यार इस सिनेरियो में क्या होता है. सो दीज आर ऑल द रेस कंडीशंस when there is a race to get something done at the same time.
So it
Okay.
can be either way.
Sorry.
It can be either way. It can debits from the account and then credited him back.
But आप
It can be either
Depends on
way.
different algorithm.
It
इस
can,
scenario,
but I think that first the credit should be there, because sometimes if the balance is low in
Mhm.
those conditions it would be beneficial. बैंक को extra workload नहीं बढ़ेगा उससे, क्योंकि if credit first हो रहा है तो अगर वो बैलेंस लो है तो वो ऑटोमेटिकली कंपनसेट हो जाएगा. अगर
बिल्कुल.
नहीं है तो वो एक डिफॉल्ट हो जाए, एंट्री हो जाएगी, और उसकी वजह से फिर देयर वुड बी अ होल अदर प्रोसेस व्हिच वुड बी गोइंग ऑन.
Absolutely. So Paramveer, I was coming to this point कि अभी हम ये कर रहे हैं कि is in this particular scenario they have mentioned that X has 1,000. So think of a scenario that X has 0. ठीक है, X के पास 0 है, तो विवेक ने जब परमवीर को 500 डाला, ठीक है, तो 500 उसके में आए और आते ही हरप्रीत को चले गए. But it depends that you don't
Depends
know
on
how
algorithm.
depends on the algorithm. but this is a very interesting scenario to test ना. अगर ऐसा होता है कि यार मतलब कुछ ऐसे मिसकैलकुलेशन, ऐसे सिनेरियोज में ऐसा होता है कि कुछ मिसकैलकुलेशन हो, कुछ मिस फंक्शनैलिटी हो, और वहां परमवीर के में 500 आ भी जाए और डेबिट भी ना हो. ये भी हो सकता है सिनेरियो कि परमवीर के अकाउंट में विवेक के पैसा आ तो गया, बट उसी समय सिस्टम ने बोला कि उसके अकाउंट में पैसा है नहीं और हरप्रीत को गया नहीं, तो परमवीर को 500 रुपए का फायदा हो गया. ठीक है. सो दीज आर द रेस कंडीशंस आर वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. और ये जो है ना, दिस इज वेयर वी नीड अ मैनुअल टेस्टर. ठीक है. सो टू थिंक ऑफ दीज ब्यूटीफुल सिनेरियोज, ये बहुत बढ़िया सिनेरियोज हैं. हाउ डू यू थिंक ऑफ दीज सिनेरियोज? ओनली अ मैनुअल पर्सन who understands the system well can think of these scenarios, right? And that's why we say the testers are the saviors, क्योंकि sometimes these minor defects can cost billions and trillions, especially when it comes to the banking systems. अभी बहुत सारे, अभी थोड़ा टाइम पहले, I don't know if you know on Amazon कुछ तो समथिंग हैपेंड, और उनका जो एसीज थे, वोल्टास का 1.5 टन का एसी 5500 या 5000 में डाल दिया था उन्होंने, और विद इन मिनट्स यू डोंट नो हाउ मेनी ऑर्डर्स वर मेड. बट Amazon had to save their brand name. They had to process those orders, irrespective of the fact that they went into losses, some loss. ठीक है. Amazon के लिए that wasn't a big loss, but again, to save their brand name, they delivered each and every order that was accepted during that time. Okay. So ऐसा बहुत होता है रेस कंडीशंस में. रेस कंडीशंस आर बेसिकली वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. सबसे ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम्स और वो जो होते हैं उनसे में होते हैं रेस कंडीशंस में, लॉसेस टू द कंपनीज. ऑलराइट, मूविंग अहेड टू द एरर गेसिंग. एरर गेसिंग आर योर स्किल्स एज अ टेस्टर. समटाइम्स यू गेट टू नो, यार based on my past experience, this is the place in an application where error happens, or a defect happens. So based on your past experience, you try to hit on that particular area where you know that in my previous applications I find the defect. For example, when I update my mobile, and when an update is running in the background and I try to click a photo, then crash happens. So आपको पहले ये scenario मिला है. Then being a tester, you will try to use this scenario, test this scenario on the newer application that you are assigned to test. Okay. So you guess, okay. So example, the classic well-placed guess may reveal the bug, which could easily be missed by others. So yes, if you sometime in ad hoc testing, you try to guess that, okay, in this particular area, defect can happen. If we talk about localization testing, so in the localization testing, sometimes we get to know here, this is a screen where truncation can happen, where the text we can see the text has been truncated because of the fact that if there is a small text box that is accommodating some kind of text in it, right, and it is truncating, let's say for one language, which is Russian, then it is 100% sure that it will get truncated for German as well, because German language key strings are the longest strings in the world. So if you have to translate boy is going to school, so in German it will be going to be a 10 or 12 words into this one sentence when you translate it into German. So वो error guessing है, being a localization functional tester, that you know this fact and you will be able to find that defect based on your experience, based on the guess that you make. Okay, this is the place where error can happen. Okay, moving ahead. Okay, any questions so far on error guessing or race conditioning? No? All right, then move ahead. Let's. Why? So to provide, why we do testing? To provide rapid feedback on a new product or feature. That's important. That's why we do a testing. To learn the product quickly. To find the single most important bug in the shortest time. Right. So these are basically the facts that these are things that we take care of when we do a testing. So the reason of doing testing, to improvise on scripted tests. How do we improvise on the scripted test? So the test that you have written, with the new features coming in, sometimes those tests change, right? And you have to update those tests. To write new scripts, to write new test scripts. Test scripts or test cases, jo hai na, people use very interchangeably these things. But the difference is, there is a difference in test case and test script. Right? Test case is when you are testing a smallest unit of a application, of a functionality. Okay. And test script is when you are testing a end-to-end workflow following a test script is basically a collection of test cases to test a particular workflow. Example is, if you are testing a validation on a particular form, validation is working or not. You are getting yourself registered in an application. वहां पे सिर्फ 3 fields हैं, first name, email ID and password, and confirm password, new password, confirm password. When you are putting an email ID, there should be a validation. Then you write a test case that only try to put an email ID without a sign into it, @ character into it. Okay. Application should not accept it. Error message should come that please enter a valid email ID. Try to put an email ID where .com, .in, .au, .org is missing, right? So this is how these are the validation test cases, and each test case is testing one validation point. But think of a test case wherein you are checking the full workflow, that login into the application, right? Click on a item that you want to purchase. If it is an e-commerce website, add it to a cart, make the payment, and check the delivery status, right? So this is actually a test script that is checking the whole workflow that a user can complete in a application. So that's why in automation testing, we always say that we are writing a test script, because there is no point of testing a validation in an automation testing. In an automation testing, see, normally automation testing mein kya hota hai? On automation testing, we run the regression suites, and the regression suites are basically the tests which we run over and over on an application again, right? So jo one time effort hai, if there is a test case that has to execute only once, what is the point of automating it? Okay, because in order to automate one test case, it may require 5 hours of effort. उसको record करना है, उसकी coding करनी है, right? So 5 hours of effort to automate one test case, that is to be executed only once. और उस टेस्ट केस को हम अगर मैनुअली एग्जीक्यूट करते हैं, then it takes just 20 minutes. तो वो टेस्ट केस कभी भविष्य में इन फ्यूचर दोबारा एग्जीक्यूट नहीं होना है. Why to spend 5 hours in automating that test? So we automate only those test cases which are executed over and over again. We call them regression test suites, right? So if there is a test cases, there is a set of test cases, I call that a sanity. Sanity test cases जो हैं, we execute every time we receive a build. हर बार चलाएंगे हम. So मान लो in a life cycle of an application हमारे पास 100 builds आई for testing. और 100 builds में हमने 100 times तो sanity test suite रन किया ही है फिर, right? So अगर एक sanity test suite को manually execute करने में लगते हैं 2 hours, right? तो 100 टाइम उसको करने में हमें लगने थे 200 hours, but if to automate that sanity test suite, it took 50 hours to automate that. And after automating, all we needed to do was to run the script that hardly takes 5 minutes to make the configuration and click on the run button, and then come back and see the results. So the manual effort of execution that was of 2 hours daily, वो अब manual effort रह गया 10 मिनट का daily. ठीक है? So 50 hours plus 100 into 10, 1000 divided by 60, 30 almost. ठीक है? So नहीं, कितना हुआ? 1000 divided by 60, almost 17. ठीक है? So 50 plus 17, 67. So manually the effort was of 200 hours. जो हमने कैलकुलेट किया था सैनिटी को अगर डेली 2 घंटे चलाते हैं तो 100 बिल्ड्स आती हैं, तो बट ऑटोमेशन से वो रिड्यूस होके 67 आवर्स में हो गया. ठीक है? तो हाउ मच वी सेव्ड? 133 hours, right? So which is a good which is a good saving, I would say, and but only in a case where you have to do it on a daily basis, or it was a concurrent activity, right? If अगर सिर्फ one time effort है, then we do not automate it, right? So that's why in automation we run the regression test suites only. Okay, so regression testing based on old bug reports, right? All right, so when to do it? Okay, so I think what is the time? मैं तो अभी आया हूँ. You guys are here from 6:30. Okay, 7:47. Break ले लेते हैं. Do we need a break of 5 minutes?
Yeah, let's take a break. 5 minutes. Short.
5 minutes. What time it is? 7:48. Let's meet at 7:53 after 5 minutes. Okay.
Any questions, Param?
नहीं, अभी तक तो everything is good.
Vivek, Harpreet?
No, clear.
Great.
Okay, sir.
Good.
एक बार अखिल फर्स्ट स्लाइड शो करना.
Okay, just a second. कौन सी specifically first slide बता पाओ? Static testing.
Yes.
This one. यही वाली क्या विवेक, मतलब इससे पहले तो we had this.
यही static testing.
Any questions on this, Vivek?
वो चेक
No.
किया, वो उसमें बंद करते हैं कि नहीं? Actually, I do not know C++. I have only knowledge of Java.
नहीं मैंने अभी तो
that
नहीं
code
देखा.
editor.
एक बार चेक करके आप बताना मेरे को, पर मैंने नहीं देखा. The idea that we covered in that example was we are not executing that code. That could be definitely an issue if that is if that is not the right syntax of C++. So that is what we do during our static testing. We figure out whether the syntax has been written properly or not, whether the logic has been applied correctly or not, without executing the code, without compiling the code.
नहीं, उसमें बंद नहीं करते, ओपन ही है दूसरी साइड से.
Okay.
But I do not know about C++, so that one, that was the issue. I only know Java, that too a little bit.
Okay, so good, Vivek, on this one. Let me just move forward.
Static testing done by QA team.
Static testing can be done by QA, can be done by developers. Basically, if you are going to check each and everything in the code, it should be done by developers, not by the QA. Or you can say QA who have knowledge about the code. जैसे अपन अभी परम और जो मेरा डिस्कशन हो रहा है कि C++ के अंदर ना मेरे को अच्छी से आती C++, ना परम को आती. So we don't have 100% confirmation whether that C out का उसकी brackets बंद होने चाहिए थे कि नहीं होने चाहिए थे. So if we do, Param, or if Param and I, if we start doing static testing of C++ code, we would not be the right people to do it. Somebody who has complete understanding कि उसका syntax कैसे लिखा जाता है, so that should be the person who should be doing it. Okay, just Vishal sir, are you here? Okay, if not, let me cover a few points. I think we were on this when to do it, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so when you do your testing, or when you start testing your application, so you have to talk to yourself as to when are you going to do your testing. When is it that you will start testing your application? Theoretically, we attempted this question in our assessment that we should start our testing right from the requirement phase. What if we don't even have any requirement document in our project? What then?
Then we can start as soon as we have a design.
Right. If you don't have requirements, let's start on design. Design भी नहीं है आपके पास में, then what?
Then when we receive some builds, only
Build
then
and
we can do the testing.
अगर
have-
coding भी आती है तो then tester what gonna do?
तो खाली बैठेगा वो और कुछ नहीं कर सकते if you don't have the code as well. But if you see in the market now, 60 to 70% of the applications don't have requirements, don't have design. So when you start testing, start your testing activities on your
Bug testing, just what the program product is about.
what was that? What was that? Just when I could not catch that one.
if we don't have requirements, if we don't have the design, if we don't have the coding, so what we gonna do as a
You will have coding. You will have code. If you don't have code, you probably won't even be put on the job of testing.
yeah,
would
and
not-
then if we have the code, then we gonna do just the black box testing, I think.
So if you don't have requirements, if you don't have design, which is what I was telling, for 60 to 70% of the application out there in the market, you won't find requirements or the design. So when you start on any application, what you would be given is a test URL or a test build for your mobile application, and
Okay.
and you would be said that you start your testing activities.
Okay.
So how do you start on that? What should be your first thing that you would start with?
First thing, we would analyze what the application has to do, and accordingly we would plan our test cases and execute them. Basically, we would be doing ad hoc testing at first, but then we would plan and do the rest of the testing.
Your explanation was right, Param, but it is not called ad hoc testing. Since we don't know what this application is, we don't have the requirements. So when we start exploring the application to understand what this application is all about, we call it exploratory testing.
Which one?
That is exploratory.
Exploratory.
You're exploring this application, you're navigating through the application, you're understanding what logics have been implemented. And based on your understanding, based on your experience, your knowledge on that particular domain, you will start calling out defects in the application. So in such scenarios, it is very common to report features as defects. Since we do not have 100% clarity on the requirements, you from your experience say that this particular thing, this is not working fine, and you report that as a defect. But then it comes back to you, and it is called that this is a feature that we have implemented it as it is in the code, and this is not a defect. This is something that we have built as it is in the application. From that, you would understand, okay, so this is a requirement. This is not a defect. This is how the application has to behave. So you correct your understanding on the requirement, and out of that understanding, then you again resume your exploratory testing or any other type of testing then. So this is mostly how you start on an application. So to answer this question, when to do it? Whenever you are assigned to a project, if you have requirements, good enough, review those requirements and get started. If you don't have requirements, so when you have a build, you have to start at that particular time. So when you have the code, if you don't have the code, Jaspinder, so QA team would not be put on the team. If you don't have a billing, it would be said to that you stay on, you hang on for some more time. Once we have the build, we will then engage you.
I have a question here. When we have a code, right? When we have a build, then we can discuss with the developers what is this product about.
Mhm.
What is
Yeah, you
application.
definitely for
That's how
attaining
you
that
do it,
understanding, you can
And,
have a discussion with the developers. You can have a discussion with the with other team members that are on there. So you develop that understanding, but you don't have to take what the developer has said to you, because the developer has coded has written the code as per his requirement, as per his understanding, which may not be aligned to the requirement that the client has given,
Mhm.
which could be the incorrect implementation of his understanding from the
Okay.
requirements that the client has given. But to gain some understanding, to come up to that particular level, you definitely can meet with your developers, with your designers in the team, with the project manager, or whatever person, whatever role is available in the team. You can definitely take that input from them. But it's better as a tester, it's better that you test everything out yourself, test out everything yourself, and report it. So in case if it is not even a defect, you have a documented version of it being called as a feature, so that down the line nobody comes and comes in and asks us why this has not been implemented correctly, because somebody would tell you that this was reported as a defect to me. You can tell them that this was reported as a defect to me, and somebody told me that this is a feature. That is the reason we are moving ahead calling it as a feature, not as a defect. So until and unless as a tester, matlab apna dharam hai as a tester to test each and everything out there in the application and not take anybody else's word that nahi, this is fine here. This is how I have coded it, and you should not report a defect on it. अगर ऐसा developer बोले आपको, तो he is not your true friend. You have to test it out completely yourself. Get an approval from the senior authority. Project manager भी हो सकता है, dev manager भी हो सकता है, test manager भी हो सकता है, scrum master भी हो सकता है. So take approval from them if they are calling it, if they are marking it as not a defect.
So
Did we-
developer is, I'm sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So developer is generally, concerned or have knowledge around that component that he is assigned to develop. Sometimes they are not aware of how this functionality, the full-fledged workflow is going to work in an application, right? Because they are working in a confined environment. They used to work in a confined environment, not now, but earlier they used to work in a confined environment where they just, concerned with the component they are assigned to work on. So they do not know. Somebody who is developing a login functionality, he doesn't know that after getting logged into the application, what will be the next workflow in the application, what will be the next user action on the application, because he is given the specifications for developing a login page and he is working on that only. So to get a 360 view of an application, it's always advisable to reach out to the product managers, program managers, or the system analysts. Otherwise, testers are supposed to have a thorough knowledge of an application, the end-to-end workflow, end-to-end knowledge of an application, right? So that's why testers' profile is, even people rely on testers to get some feedback on how this particular functionality should work in the application. I was working in one of the projects where there were multiple teams were working in parallel, right? So in a single project, and being one team member, sometimes we used to have a doubt that how this particular functionality which is being integrated to our component is going to work. What will be the behavior? So our project manager used to advise us, कि एक काम करो, log a defect. So we had a flexibility to open a defect in any other component of an application. तो हमें बोलते थे कि तुम उनके component में ये defect log कर दो. And when we used to log a defect in their component, the tester which is actually assigned to work on that particular component, उस tester से, because वो tester जो था, see, Jaspinder is assigned to work to work on that component. मैं किसी दूसरे component में काम कर रहा हूँ, तो जब मैं defect log करूंगा, जिस component पे Jaspinder QA assigned है, वो सबसे पहले क्या करेंगे? Validate करेंगे मेरे defects को, validate करेंगे, right? So वो QC करेंगे कि विशाल ने जो डिफेक्ट डाला है वो सही भी है, वो एक्शन सही कर रहा है कि नहीं कर रहा है, ठीक है? So because Jaspinder knows her component in and out, so then she will add a comment. अगर तो वो valid defect है, that defect will be marked as a defect to fix, that this has to be fixed. अगर वो valid नहीं है, if my expected result is incorrect, वो कुछ और होना चाहिए, then Jaspinder will assign that defect back to me, adding a comment that okay, you are not following the right steps, or this functionality is not supposed to work like this, it is designed the other way around, right? And then so in both cases I have a win-win situation. या तो मेरा defect valid हो जाएगा, fix हो जाएगा, valid नहीं होगा, then I will get a feedback that how this particular feature should work. So ऐसा भी होता है project में, when there are multiple components, तो आप sometimes you log a defect कि हाँ यार मुझे process पता चल जाए. Paramveer, you have a question? You raised
Yes,
your hand.
actually, I was talking, I was listening what Akhil was saying. So he said that if developer is saying that it is a feature and not a defect on something, you should validate it from some project lead or something. then what is the process? Like I logged a defect. He sent me back that this is not a defect and it is a feature. So after that, what should I do?
You have to withdraw your defect if you have already logged it.
No, actually, the developer is saying that it is not a defect.
Okay.
So he said that you should verify it from project lead or Scrum Master. So
Fine.
how would that be done? That is my point.
So what
Okay, you see in today's scenario, it's very easy, Parambir. There are Slack channels. You can ask this question on a Slack channel to the project manager. You can send an email to project manager and ask on an email. But email, is something that rarely happen nowadays. The whole communication happen over a Slack channel. So you put your query on the Slack channel, you will get a response, and based on the response that you receive from the project manager, you act accordingly.
No, actually, what I was saying,
Suno,
I'm
Param,
saying is,
to answer your question, if you log a defect, you feel that that is a defect from your experience, and you log that defect. The developer comes in and he marks that defect as not a defect, and the comment that he adds it saying that this is a feature that we have developed. Okay, for some of the cases, you would have to agree with him. You won't get into a conflict with that developer. You would agree कि ठीक है ये defect नहीं है, ये feature है. For other cases wherein you have a strong logic which comes in from your experience or from your domain knowledge that you have on this particular defect, you would still not agree with that developer. So you can reopen that defect, assign it to your product owner or to your Scrum Master or anybody senior in that team, and you can write your comment telling your logic behind it, that I, from my experience, feel that this should not be implemented in this way. So that is one way of addressing or of raising your point, raising your voice on that particular issue. The other that Vishal told about is आजकल ज़्यादातर emails पे there is no communication that is happening. You would have Slack or you would have Microsoft Teams or you would have Skype in your project, wherein you would have all the team members there in one of those channels or one of your groups there. So either you can do write to that particular product owner in that group that I logged this defect, but as per Vishal, who is the developer, he says that this is a feature, not a defect. So I wanted to clarify it because my logic, my understanding behind this particular defect is this. So if the product owner also says कि ठीक है भाई ये नहीं, this is something that the client has asked us to develop it in this way, you would take that as a approval from him. If you say कि नहीं वो product owner is still not giving you the right logic behind it, you still would have your point. So whenever you have a point, politely put that point across the board कि मेरा understanding ये है. Don't get into a conflict कि नहीं यार ये गलत बोल रहा है ऐसा है वैसा, because you are a new member to the team. You probably may not have that understanding of what these people would already have, the developers would already have. So put it in a polite way, take that understanding from them. If you agree to them, ठीक है, फिर ठीक है, defect को अपन not a defect mark करते हैं. If not, you can keep pushing the product owner, the Scrum Master, or whosoever it is. ठीक है, I think we have.
I was only on that that would create a conflict के वो बोलेगा कि what are you doing?
अरे देखो,
I already told you.
If I think about the projects wherein we were working in 2006 2007 na, I used to see that conflicts happening between the dev and the QA team on a daily basis. लड़ाइयाँ होती थी. But I would say that since we have come along a long way, people have got matured. The industry, IT industry in itself has got matured. People across both the lines, I would say, have attained that understanding कि QA भी काम कर रहा है, dev भी काम कर रहा है. They have their own understanding, and since we now have this agile come into picture, this agile methodology has brought everybody on the same page. चाहे developer है, चाहे designer है, चाहे the QA person, everybody has the same understanding of the project. So those conflicts nowadays have reduced to a very great extent. Else नहीं तो जब office spaces के अंदर बैठते थे, I had seen people literally मतलब going to the developers desk shouting on them कि क्या बनाया भाई तूने ये. Was this how it was written down in the requirement? People coming in from the dev side to the QA, तूने मेरे डिफेक्ट के अंदर कोड, तूने मेरे कोड के अंदर डिफेक्ट कैसे निकाल दिया. चाहे वो डिफेक्ट वैलिड है, बट दिस इज हाउ दे यूज्ड टू फाइट। चाय पीने साथ में जाएंगे, चाय पी के आया, 4 बजे आके सीट पे बैठा, डिफेक्ट लॉक कर दिया जो कि विशाल ने कोड किया था, तो विशाल आके मेरे को गालियां देंगे आके कि निकाला कैसे तूने डिफेक्ट ही। लिटरली आई हैव सीन दीज थिंग्स हैपनिंग इन द ऑफिस एनवायरनमेंट एज वेल, बट नाउअडेज सब खत्म हो गया, ये पीपल अंडरस्टैंड। एंड आई थिंक इन दिस
राइवलरी जो है वो खत्म हो गई अब, टेस्टर और डेवलपर वाली।
आप क्रिकेट टीम के अंदर बैट्समैन और बॉलर होते थे पहले, एक कपिल देव एक ऑलराउंडर हुआ करता था, आजकल देखो 5-6 तो ऑलराउंडर घूम रहे होते हैं। I think in this discussion now we have covered some part of this last point that is mentioned here. When there is little or no specifications or no requirements, when you have little or no domain knowledge, then how are you going to test your application? If I say, okay, after this course is done, you have got complete understanding of how you have to test an application, but from the domain perspective, you still don't understand how a banking domain would work, and the application that is assigned to you is on banking domain. How is it that you are going to approach that particular application?
You can do research on that. And other thing is you can test as it is, like whatever there is, whatever you know, you can test that and ask for some help in the other things which you do not know.
Therefore, very true. You get trained yourself on that particular domain. If that training is not available, whatever documentation is available, you go through that documentation. If the documentation is not available, then you start testing, or you can say that you start using that application and as an end user to understand what this whole application is all about. What is the logic behind developing this whole application? Why users should be using this application? So start from that point of understanding ki hai hi kyun ye application. For example, if we talk about Facebook, we never took any training on using how Facebook would work. What as end users we started doing is we started using this application. And ho sakta hai, for my case, I can definitely say that if Facebook has those 100 features that are built into it, I may be using just those 20 to 30% of those features till now. मेरे को नहीं पता होगा कि कैसे कम्युनिटी, कैसे ग्रुप्स, कैसे कहाँ शेयर करते हैं, what are the different security features that are built into Facebook, how we manage those security privacy settings. So I would be just concerned about those 20-30% of the features that that Facebook holds, and as a user I would knowingly or unknowingly test those 20-30 features over and over again. So in the similar way, when you start on a project on which you don't have any good domain knowledge, you first start to understand what this application is all about. From there you get that understanding and take it a level further कि और depth में जाता हूँ, और architecture देखता हूँ, और features explore करते हैं इसके. That is how you get that exposure to the domain. And over the time, what you would feel when you have worked on several domains, and there is a new domain that comes into picture, you would have that confidence that since I have tested many applications on several other domains, more or less 30% of things would apply on this particular domain as well. So you start from those particular guidelines, those particular things that you know ki acha, from my experience, though I don't have experience on this domain, but from my previous experience I know ki ye cheezein ho sakti hain that I should be looking at in the first phase. From there you start picking up things. So if I have to take my own example, I have in my initial career I had worked on e-learning, e-commerce, media publishing, LMS, CMS, retail, video content management, and then with Expedia I was given the travel domain, specifically the airlines domain. और आपको मैं आगे एक सेशन के अंदर I would explain you on a very high level how the airlines or the travel domain works. But if I had to understand that whole architecture of the travel domain, it took me 3 months. इतना बड़ा architecture था वो. The first day that I opened that whole architecture diagram, I was like, वो इतना बड़ा PDF था, मतलब उसको मैं zoom कर रहा था इधर उधर, मुझे मतलब what is the starting point here? पूरा पहला दिन तो मेरे को यही समझने में लग गया था कि where do I start from, what are the components here, इतना कॉम्प्लेक्स आर्किटेक्चर होता है. बट आफ्टर मतलब it took me 3 months to understand the architecture. इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि that I was productive after 3rd month. From day one as a scrum master, I started giving those tasks to my team that they have to work upon, even without me having good understanding of the project. After 3 months, when I had a good understanding of the project, I was able to answer most of the questions that came in from the team. 6 महीने के बाद में we were able to release this product out in the market, which was a $20 million project, Expedia. And then came this thing, telecom wala, Tech Mahindra, AT&T के साथ में, when we were testing telecom application. Again, for the first time, I was working on a telecom domain. Telecom domain, but from my experience, I would say telecom domain समझना कुछ scope नहीं है. If you all are using a mobile application, you all have a mobile. If you are paying a bill for your mobile phone, or if you are paying a bill for your broadband connection, you have this understanding of telecom domain to an extent of 30 to 40% already. How the billing works, how the plans work, how the account management works. Behind the scene जो complex चीजें हैं उनको समझने के लिए how the OSS or the BSS stuff works in a telecom domain, you definitely have to get trained upon that. And अगर मैं विशाल सर से पूछूंगा, विशाल सर बोलेंगे आज के दिन यार है डोमेन नॉलेज की कोई जरूरत ही नहीं है. Why do you need to have any domain knowledge? I can test any domain. Give me that application.
When I started my career, if you remember, Akhil, there was a guy from QAI, Pradeep. He is an excellent person, great mentor, and I would call him an evangelist in the software industry. So once he came for a guest lecture in our office, I was just 2-3 years experienced test engineer at that time, and he told one thing at that time, that see, testing is all about requirement. People say that this domain, that domain, travel, BFSI, finance, e-learning, right, telecom. But at the end of the day, if you are able to understand the requirement, then you will be able to test any application in the world. Just focus on understanding the requirement. So, and then I used to ask the people that I used to hire in my team, let's see, did anybody teach you on how to use Windows 10 operating system, or how to work on a Android 11 operating system? We learned the feature on our own, and there are many features which are still unexplored in these operating systems. But when there is need, we do a Google around, we do a little YouTube
Training,
and we
self-training. On a daily basis, you have to do that for number of hours.
and we start doing it when we start using that feature. So that is very important. So through this training, what we are actually doing, we are enabling you to be a self-sufficient tester, right? So that's deliberately. I mean, when you come to us and ask that why aren't we getting any testing material, we can give away these slides to you. No, there is no harm in it, but we do not do it because we like it very much when you come back to us, when Vivek comes back to us and asks a question that I was searching something on a Google and I found that what you taught yesterday, I found it there is a conflict that what is written on the internet. So what is written on the internet is not 100% true always, because Wikipedia is something that is being updated by all of us. We are contributing, we are adding the information in it, right? So authenticity of an information is very important. But when we see that you are being enabled to do a research, understanding the requirement, your requirement in this case, that you understand your requirement, my requirement is to be a software tester and learn the concepts, either through this session or after this session through my self-study, for my self-research. right? So if you are enabled, you will be able to do it. हम आज भी Google करते हैं यार. I mean, if एक time था when we started our career, there wasn't a Google around, but now we do it. So
Very true.
enabling is the key.
Very true. Just to add to that example जो आपने दिया of Vivek searching something and coming back to us, though he may find it conflicting, but I would say that even if he's saying that this is a conflict between what you taught and versus what I see on the internet, what I would feel is that he is 80 to 85% clear on the concept. That is why he is saying कि कुछ conflict है. If you're not trying, not googling it, so you're taking it कि ठीक है for granted कि ठीक है जो ये बोल रहे हैं वो ठीक है. You're not validating what we are teaching here. Okay, so coming on to the last sentence, I would say on this last bullet item, when you don't have time to specify, script and test, when there is time pressure. So consider this scenario. Practically, this is something that you are going to experience several times in your career. You are testing an application. You still don't have time to write all the test cases, all the test scripts. You are said that don't waste your time on writing these test cases. Directly jump on your testing. Execute whatever you can execute on the build that we have, because we have to release this build to production in 15 days of time. So there is a time pressure. There is a time bomb ticking on your head that you have to complete your testing without having all the necessary scripting with you, and you have to ensure that in these 15 days or 1 month or 2 months period of time, depending upon how complex this application is, you have to complete all your testing. What should be your approach in here?
I would still plan first. Okay, what are all the features that I want to or need to test in that particular thing, particular build, and if I have that set of rules that I have prepared for myself, then I can test those things.
More or less, you are right. You have to rephrase little bit, Param. Anybody else wants to add? Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we prioritize the application. What are the priority test cases we have to do? So which one is the more priority, then medium, then the low priority?
Test cases abhi hai nahi hamare paas mein. We have to start executing, or we have to start testing the application. But priority is something that you would have to define. And what Param said, that your wordings were something like this, Param, that I would decide on the priorities. I would decide what are the major features here. Then I would execute the plan that I create. Okay, just change the word from I doing it myself. I myself identifying what the major features are. I prioritizing those major features. I की जगह वो हटा के keep the product owner or the scrum master here, who would tell us what are the major features that have to be rolled out when we are rolling out this build onto production. Have them prioritize these things. Have them call out ki what are the major things, what are the minor things here. Based on that, then you create your plan.
Basically, I should say that I will ask the Scrum Master what are the major features, and then I will plan.
Then you will plan. Correct. Okay, because you planning yourself without knowing कि application का क्या major feature जाने वाला है, so there may be a difference between what and how you prioritize things versus what the application or the client wants. Again, I have to take or tell this example from one of my previous organizations, where this application came to us with an email saying that a very renowned company, Wipro, was working on this application for 6 months, and they were not able to release it to production. And this application was being built for both Windows and for Mac devices, iOS devices. So they approached us, Q Infotech को बोला कि you start testing this application, and we have to release this onto production in 2 weeks. अब हमारे पास में ना तो टीम, मेरे को CEO ने बुलाया और दे दिया कि ये एप्लीकेशन है पकड़, and I asked him, I need a team to execute this testing. He said तेरे को जो फ्लोर पे खाली बंदा दिखता है उसको उठा ले. So I moved around, roamed around on the floor. ऐसे तो किसी को नहीं उठा सकता था. I went to all the managers and the leads and I told that I need people who have bandwidth on your project and I want to create a team for 2 weeks. I need these people. So in this way I had 30 people who were in my team, and we all started on this application testing it 24/7 for 2 weeks. Na koi Saturday, na koi Sunday, na koi Monday, na Tuesday. And I could not manage both things, that the client interaction, client को भी आपको बात करनी है, उससे भी पूछना है क्या ठीक चल रहा है, and I could not manage the team as well. So I called in another friend of us, Karandeep Singh. Maybe we call him in one of those guest lectures in this session. So he came in for help. He was also managing multiple projects, but उसने बोला कि ठीक है मैं help करता हूँ. So I used to work from like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the morning. Then he used to work from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. in the night. तो क्लाइंट इंटरेक्शन वो रात को 12 बजे 12 घंटे वो देखता था, सुबह मैं देखता था, एंड टीम मैनेजमेंट सारा का सारा सुबह मैं देखता था, शाम में वो देखता था. एंड आफ्टर 2 weeks of time we were not up to the mark, and what we did was we created a test report, a test result matrix telling the client that your application is supported on these OS versions of Windows which we can release, but for iOS your application is not up to the mark, so we can't release for any of those versions for iOS. So client respected that, और उन्होंने 2 हफ्ते के बाद में जो हमने versions call out किए थे on the Windows XP था, क्या क्या था याद नहीं है मेरे को, they did the first production release after 6 months of Wipro testing it for no results, and after 2 weeks of our testing they released it to production, and after that there were subsequent releases every week, every fortnight, so that we had support for all the other Windows OS plus for Mac OS. At the end of this project there was an email that came in from client जिसके अंदर हमारे कंपनी के भी लोग थे और विप्रो के भी लोग थे, और जो हमारी उसने तारीफ करी that was all good. वो सुन के इतना अच्छा नहीं लगा जो सेकंड पार्ट के अंदर विप्रो वालों की जो बेइज्जती करी थी, जितना वो पढ़ के मजा आया था. So this goes very well with this example of how you have to approach those conditions wherein you have time pressure, and practically आपको ये बहुत फेस करने को मिलेगा. Every project won't have this luxury कि 6 महीने हैं, 1 साल है, आराम से करते चलो. You will have these conditions come up very easily, very frequently. 2 हफ्ते हैं, एक महीना है, रिलीज करो. All right, so this brings us to the end of this session. If you have any questions, we can address those, else we will play a quiz before we close today's session. Okay, 5 seconds ka silence means no questions, and I like this. So let's go ahead with the quiz. White box testing is also known as
ट्रांसपेरेंट टेस्टिंग,
ट्रांसपेरेंट ग्लास
टेस्टिंग,
क्लियर टेस्टिंग,
clear box.
क्लियर बॉक्स.
Good, yeah. Testing that involves the execution of the software of a component or system is known as static testing. Is this true or false?
फॉल्स.
किसने बोला false?
परम.
Okay. Anybody else who agrees with Param? Param को कोई वोट देना चाहता है या परम के खिलाफ कोई बीजेपी में खड़ा होना चाहता है, कांग्रेस में खड़ा होना चाहता है? Param is saying false. Anybody?
फॉल्स.
False.
3 false में गए. हरप्रीत? Can't say.
Sir, I will go with false. Majority wins.
चलो with the audience. ऑडियंस पोल के साथ में जाते हैं, और ठीक है आप लोगों का सबका आंसर ठीक है. ऑडियंस को थैंक यू बोल दो. ऐसा कुछ बोलता अमिताभ बच्चन. So static testing के अंदर we don't execute the code, we don't compile the code, we don't pass the code. We do the walkthroughs, we do the inspections, we review the code that has been written to check for any logical or any syntax errors. In what type of testing internal working of the system is tested? No options here. KBC नहीं है.
वाइट बॉक्स टेस्टिंग.
Okay. बाकी 3 लोग अभी सोच ही रहे हैं
White
कि
box.
White box.
व्हाइट बॉक्स. जसपिंदर आप फ्रोजन हो? नहीं ठीक है. ओके नहीं you okay with white box? Huh? Internal working of the application when we test the code, each line, each path, each branch, each condition. That is how we do the white box testing. In the black box, the code is blacked out from us. We don't even have the access to the code. We just pass in the input, and we know on this particular input this should be the expected output. So the output that we get in actual is matched with our expected output to know whether this is a pass scenario or a failed scenario. Moving further, fourth one here, 3 coverage criteria.
line
Criterias.
branch and condition.
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 Line, branch, and condition. Line or statement, branch, and then condition. Okay. Moving further, dash, or this involves working with the software, giving
Black
input
box.
values.
White.
Black box test.
Black box.
Very
Black
good.
box.
Fastest finger first भी शुरू हो गया अभी. All right. So sixth one is black box testing is a testing technique with the
True.
internal working of the application.
Internal working of an application. False.
अब तो दबा दिया आपने true वाला. अब आपका ये
False. False.
This is false.
Right.
This is false. In black box technique, we don't see the internal working of the application. Input and expected output पे खेलते हैं. Race condition and time dependencies fall under technique of white box testing. True or false?
True.
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 No.
True. True.
Case condition.
Paramir, true.
No, white box. Sorry, false.
False.
White box is false. Actually, it is very confusing because जो coding वाली screen होती है ना, वो मुझे कोई black दिखाई दे रही है.
Black box. Okay. ठीक है. False.
Yeah, black.
Race condition, yeah, race condition.
False.
Race condition black box की है.
Black box.
This question is false.
Race condition is for black box, not for white. Okay. Defining equivalence classes. The groups of classes that are needed to differentiate are. What are those different classes that we create?
Valid or invalid?
Valid and invalid.
Invalid.
याद हो गया आपसे रट्टे मार लिए सबने. ठीक है. Done with the quiz. Very good. We had a nice interactive quiz session today, which I would say I have to stop screen share. Brings us to the end of today's session. 5 minutes overtime, but I think we're good with the time today.
Did we discuss the subjective questions?
नहीं आज नहीं कर पाए. We had this plan to discuss it. Let's do this tomorrow first thing before we start the session. Else नहीं तो एक बार session शुरू होता है, so we keep on adding our examples and it gets elongated. So let's do it first thing in tomorrow's session, and then we'll take up the session. तो क्या करेंगे ना, हम लोग सोच रहे थे कि आप लोगों के जो अटेम्प्टेड क्वेश्चंस है ना, उन्हीं को खोल के आप ही के सामने उनको एक बार गो थ्रू कर लेंगे. So whatever confusions we have here, we can clarify then and there.
I know, I already have the answers.
All right, so good to close today's session, दोस्तों.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye दोस्तों. Bye.
Uh,
Yeah, Jaspinder.
yeah, do you have a minute so I can call you? Actually, both.
Sure. What we can do is we can have others drop off. We can discuss here itself.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Param, Vivek, Harpreet. Bye. Good night.
Bye.